Your child knows exactly what they are doing. They looked you in the eye and said what they said. Or they walked away while you were still talking. Or they used a tone that made it clear they have decided your words do not require their attention. And somewhere underneath your frustration is the thing most parenting videos will not say out loud. You are right, this is a choice. Not every difficult child behavior is a wound looking to be heard. Some children are genuinely testing whether the standard in your home is real or negotiable. And the answer you give to that test, not in words, but in what you do next, is the thing that determines which direction the next 10 years goes. Two civilizations figured out what that answer looks like, and what they found is not what most parents expect. History documented exactly how they did it, and ancient wisdom named the principle before either of them existed. This investigation is about what actually changes it, not softens it, not reframe it, change it. Special note: the links to the resources used to help create this video are in the description to verify historical documentation. Now let's continue. Before the history, here is what researchers have documented about respect itself. Because what most parents are trying to produce and what they are actually producing are two different things, and the difference matters enormously. Researchers studying what they call internalized versus externalized compliance in children have documented a consistent finding. Children who are disciplined primarily through consequences and punishment comply when the consequence is present. When the consequence is absent, when the parent is not watching, the behavior disappears with it. Researchers call this externalized compliance. It looks like respect. It is not respectful, it is performance. Genuine respect, what researchers document as internalized compliance, is something completely different. It is the child who behaves the same whether you are watching or not. It is the child who holds the standard, because the standard has become part of how they understand themselves, not just because the cost of breaking it is high enough to deter them. Researchers studying how internalized compliance develops in children have found that it is not produced by stricter consequences. It is produced by something more specific than that. It is produced by consistency, not harshness. Consistency. Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is the difference between a child who performs respect and a child who actually has it. The parent who holds the same standard every single time, calmly, without anger, without negotiation, without being moved by the child's reaction, produces a child whose brain eventually stops testing the standard because it has learned the standard does not move. Researchers studying what they call authoritative structure in parenting have documented that children raised inside a consistent, non-negotiable behavioral framework internalize that framework faster and more completely than children raised inside a framework where the standard occasionally bends. Your child is testing whether the floor holds. Your job is to be on the floor. Now here is what the first civilization documented about how to be that floor without becoming a wall. Picture a household in ancient China during the era of Confucius, roughly 500 years before the Common Era. A child sits at the edge of a room. The adults are speaking. The child does not interrupt, not because they are afraid, because they have been taught something specific about what their voice means and when it belongs in a conversation. The Confucian concept of li, which scholars translate as ritual propriety, the documented understanding of what right behavior looks like in every specific social context, was not a set of rules imposed from outside. It was a framework for understanding one's role within a relationship and expressing that understanding through consistent action. Confucius himself believed that while a child's heart is precious, discipline and moral education are equally essential. The Book of Rites, a Confucian classic compiled in the Western Han Dynasty, states that children should devote years to learning cultural knowledge and practicing rituals, not as a form of punishment, but as the process through which a person learns to see their own behavior as a reflection of who they are. The Confucian understanding of discipline was not about the parent's power. It was about what the child was becoming. Every child is born thinking mostly about themselves. That is normal. But over time, through repeated exposure to expectations and consistent modeling, something shifts. The child begins to consider others. Not because they have to, because they have been trained to want to. What the Confucian household understood, and what researchers have since confirmed, is that a disrespectful child is not primarily a child who needs more punishment. They are a child who has not yet been helped to understand that respect is not something they give away to people who earn it. Respect is something they practice because of who they are becoming. The Confucian child who stood quietly in the presence of elders did not do it out of fear. They did it because they understood, through years of consistent modeling and consistent expectation, that this behavior was an expression of their own character. That is what the Confucian system was building. Not obedience, character. And the difference between the two is the entire point. Confucius built genuine respect through character formation, the consistent practice of right behavior until it became part of who the child was. Sparta built it through something different. Not character formation from the inside, but communal consistency from the outside, so total that the child had no alternative model to work from. Same result, different architecture. And together, they give the parent something no single approach can give alone. Picture a street in ancient Sparta. An older man is walking. A young boy sees him and steps to the side of the road without being told. Not because someone is watching, because this is simply what is done, every time, by every young person, in every street. Plutarch, the ancient historian who documented Spartan customs extensively, recorded that young Spartans were required not only to respect their own fathers, but to have regard for all older people, making room on the streets, giving up their seats, keeping quiet in the presence of elders. What historians studying Sparta have noted is that the fear and hardship alone did not produce the internalized respect the system was known for. What produced it was the consistency, the fact that every adult in the community held the same standard with the same calm expectation, so the child could not find a single crack in the wall. No softer adult to run to, no moment when the expectation bent. The standard was simply there, everywhere, every time, and the child's brain eventually stopped looking for the exception. The Spartan child could not find a negotiating partner. There was none available. If what you are learning right now about what genuinely respectful children have in common, and what Confucian China and ancient Sparta documented about building it, is giving you a new way to see what your disrespectful child actually needs from you, please take a second to like and subscribe. This channel investigates what history already knew that parenting debates never stop to look for. One click helps the next parent needing this important information find this video. Thank you. Here is what this means in your home this week. 3 things that researchers studying authoritative discipline have documented as the specific behaviors that build genuine respect over time. The first is the calm hold. The next time your child is disrespectful, do not raise your voice and do not negotiate. Say the expectation once, clearly, in a normal tone, then wait. Do not fill the silence. Do not explain yourself repeatedly. Do not soften the standard because their reaction is intense. The calm hold communicates one thing to your child's brain: this standard is not a mood. It does not go up and down based on how either of us is feeling right now. It simply is. The second is the consistent consequence, not the harshest consequence available, the most consistent one. Researchers studying what actually changes a child's behavior have found that the severity of a consequence matters far less than its consistency. A mild consequence that happens every single time trains a brain far more effectively than a severe consequence that only happens when the parent has the energy to enforce it. Choose one consequence you can deliver calmly and without fail every time the standard is broken, and then deliver it every time. The third is the modeled standard. Children learn respect most durably from watching it demonstrated, not lectured, demonstrated. How you speak to the cashier at the grocery store, how you speak to your spouse or partner when you disagree, how you speak about people who are not in the room. Your child is taking notes on all of it. And the child who watches a parent hold a respectful standard in their own behavior, regardless of whether the other person earned it, is the child whose brain begins to build a framework for what respect looks like in practice. Before the ancient wisdom that names exactly what you are building in your child, find out which inherited pattern shapes how consistently you hold the standard in your own home. The free pattern identifier quiz in the description below identifies whether you carry the rescue pattern, the silence pattern, the correction pattern, or the achiever pattern. The 4 documented patterns pass through generations of families. 2 minutes. Free. Link in the description. Come back, because what Proverbs says about this is not what most people have heard before. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6 says this: "Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old they will not depart from it." Biblical scholars studying the Hebrew word translated as train chanak have documented that it carries an agricultural meaning. It describes the deliberate process of forming a path in a young thing's palate, creating an internal appetite for something through consistent, repeated exposure rather than through force or punishment. The ancient Hebrew wisdom writers were not describing a child who is yelled into compliance. They were describing a child who is formed over time, through repeated, consistent experience, into a person who has internalized what right behavior looks and feels like. The training is not the consequence. The training is the 1,000 small moments of consistent expectation that eventually become the child's own framework for how to move through the world. History documented it. Science confirmed it. Ancient wisdom named the mechanism. Respect is not demanded, it is grown. And it has grown one calm, consistent, unmovable moment at a time. The child in your house who is choosing to be disrespectful is also a child who will respond to a standard that never moves. Not because they want to, because their brain is built to eventually stop testing a floor that has never given way. Hold the floor, every time, without anger, without negotiation, without moving. That is the whole instruction. If this investigation changed how you see what your disrespectful child actually needs, the next step is the pillar video. It is called "Why Your Child is Exactly Who History Said." If you don't watch but one other video on this channel, this pillar video is the one. It is the clearest picture this channel offers of what is running in your family right now. Watch it next now. The link is in the description.